Call the meeting to order, the December 7th planning board meeting at 6:05. I'm Stephanie Flish, chair of the planning board. To my left, I have John Jeffers, and to the end, Lee Bell. We are here, we also have Gerard Bueno, our administrative support. First item on the agenda, as always, is public forum. This is for an opportunity for the public to, or virtually, who's here virtually or in person, to speak to anything that's not on the agenda. Considering that doesn't appear that there's anyone here from the public, we will close public forum and move to board discussions and updates. So, first item on the agenda is related to our last meeting where we had, we have the Blacks looking to change the request the zoning change for 2 parcels on Church Street or Church Avenue. After looking at the process and making sure that we're doing our due diligence and everything, the process has to follow is we have to go to the select board first, and then the select board has to just say, basically like, hear what they want to do, then comes back to us. We have to do a public hearing on the matter, which that means they notify the abutters, and to give them an opportunity to come and hear what the zone change is, what they're asking for the zone change. And then we would vote to recommend, not recommend, or be neutral on the proposed change and decide to send a town meeting. So that's the process.
What are the time frameworks on those meetings?
So we should be able to get on we need to post 2 weeks ahead of
Said meeting.
the said meeting. So
Oh, that's not bad. Only
And
2
how do
weeks.
we, and also how do we go to the select board in person or in?
the select board piece, because it says as needed.
As needed because,
So that means we have to ask them if it's needed, right?
well, I don't believe it is. I think generally in the past, someone would present this to the select board and then the select board would then
Pass it on.
pass it on to us. But since they started
coming right to us.
to the planning board first, I think we can bypass the select board, but still,
As a courtesy, we should at least,
Mhm.
yeah, I can email the,
Because that's what we did with the master,
Yeah.
because the last time something like this happened, it was 2 years ago. And we did give them the heads up and go to their meeting, I think. But I think the select board was more involved in that one, I think. So, and so because of that, we would have to get that blessing, or whether either we go to the meeting or get the blessing to not need to go to their meeting to at least 2 weeks before our next meeting, in order to have the hearing for the January 4th meeting.
public notice.
Yep, the
Legal-
public
legal
notice,
notice.
legal notice you have to give 2
Legal
weeks.
notice, so you just have to write the abutters?
And yeah, you mail out to them. And generally, when there's like a special permit application or any sort of thing like that, that onus and cost is put on the applicant. However, because it is our zoning change going to town meeting, that is a cost that is incurred to the planning board budget, to pay for those legal notices and to send out the letters to notify abutters.
Okay.
Generally, like I said, that would be on the applicant if it was for any other sort of special permit or something like that. So that's how the process works for that. So we're still, the Blacks are aware that, this would have to go to town meeting anyway, whatever. It's just, delayed 1 more month, but they're slated to get language on the town meeting agenda if we need it, because I think our deadline for that is January 16th, according to Gerard. So if we plan to put any sort of town meeting warrant articles on the warrant for May town meeting, we need to put at least placeholder
February
language.
Deadline for May, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's just placeholder language. We don't need to know exactly when or what we're saying, but if we say we have to have at least draft language, and we can still work on let's say in January we have the hearing, but we need to continue it because we need more information. We can still meet that January 16th deadline with
'Cause we put it in
placeholder
place, okay.
language.
But our end product is just we recommend this, we're neutral on it, or we don't recommend
Yep, and then with whatever
it.
language.
To the meeting. Okay.
Correct. So, and then, I was hoping that we would have at this point the open space development bylaw. We've been working on with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission for 2 years to update that. And that was supposed to happen last year, and that was supposed to happen the year before. Anyway, so that is something that I reached out asking if we would have that project able to be put on town meeting warrant at this time. And Doesn't seem like it would be the case. They're a little understaffed, is my understanding. But other than that, we don't see anything else coming down from us to be on the town meeting warrant at this time. All right. That's that. And that's basically on the agenda just to notify the public for anyone who's following along and to let you all know what has transpired between now and then. Anything else on this?
I have nothing.
Moving to the next agenda item, the Comprehensive Plan Committee is meeting for the first time tomorrow, which is kind of the kickoff of a 2-year cycle to put together a new master plan or comprehensive plan. From that will be recommendations that most likely there will be some recommendations for the planning board to act on, whether it be, and from one of the recommendations will definitely be like relooking at our zoning maps and zoning bylaws. This process won't be something that comes up with all the bylaws, for example. It'll just give us the map and framework to then take this and then go and probably engage with the Pioneer Valley Planning Committee and hopefully our part-time planner to work on updating our bylaws and zoning map that matches the spirit of any sort of comprehensive plan that comes out. Because the comprehensive plan would kind of be our roadmap, our guide for any sort of plan. Like, for example, if they say we want to prioritize our rural character and our farmland, which is what was said in the 2000 master plan, like maybe we would look at certain zoning bylaws or ways to encourage development in some areas and encourage preservation in other areas and that kind of thing. So I'm just giving an update on that. And then relatedly, I had an email from a townsperson who was just quite curious about the history of our 200 feet frontage law that we have, because each town can come up with their own frontage that they want. And I actually reached out to Bob Wagner as well, but then in the process of me being the representative for the Comprehensive Plan Committee, I've started looking at our 2002 master plan. And it was, it was adopted, it looked like in the 1990s, this 200-foot zone frontage. Because the person was curious about, like, what's the benefit of this if we're trying, what's the pros of this, what's the cons of this, if it's to discourage development, and, just talking about the kinds of development 200 feet of frontage does encourage. For example, like most of the houses built before 1990 did not have 200 feet of frontage. Like if you go down Elm Street or you go down even most of Main Street, well, there's like Pleasant View Drive, your little area of town that you live in.
Yeah, it was somewhere
200 feet.
prior to 90. I know that because my sister got a variance in the mid 90s on the 200 feet.
Yeah.
So it was sometime before that.
Yeah, I want to say it was 1990 exactly, maybe. You think
The
before
house
that?
the house was built in 87, so it would have
Maybe
been,
not. Yeah, and then the master plan before that was 86, so maybe it came out of that 86
Yeah,
plan.
very well could have, yes.
But basically, yeah, and from there on, it was like 200 feet of frontage was the decision. And so, some of the stuff that came from the 2002 master plan was like, maybe we should look at narrowing, like making that smaller, so that we can have more, people, not giant, big lots, I guess you could say, with bigger houses. You could have smaller lots with smaller houses. Like, for example, my house was built in the 70s on less than 200 feet of frontage, less than 1.5 acres of land that is needed. And I don't know if I would be able to afford my same house on 1.5 acres of land, to be quite honest. So he was wondering too, also from like a development perspective, like if it's preferred to preserve land, like how does that help if it just means you just have a bigger lawn, those types of things. So there's some questions that he brought up that made me look into this. And Bob said that they actually did, coming out of the master plan, some of the things about changing some of the frontage might be something to look at. They brought that to town meeting, I guess, between this master plan and, I don't know, the last 10 years, between, 2002 and 2000, since I've been aware of, like 15, 16. And there was, I guess, they were looking at reducing the frontage in town center, which is like this area. And there was a big pushback. So they're just like, okay, we'll keep it as it is. But the point of master plan is to be like, but our master plan says we should do these things. So
Well,
it was just interesting.
I think I remember initially when the 200 feet thing was, and I don't remember specifically when it happened, but I think that had to do with maintaining the rural nature of the town. You know, keeping things from getting too compact, too buttoned in. But I think I agree with, you know, the opportunity for new houses in town is diminished, it seems, to the point where it's we've priced ourselves out of the market. And you know, there's also a lot of people that have a lot, and we've seen it over by where Omastas are. There's all of that backland going on that nobody can use for anything. And you know, and I realize that there's a tough balance between maintaining farmland and trying to find places where you can develop, you know, without changing the character of the town. And that is the balancing act that we have.
Right. And like, we don't allow flag lots. So that's what, you know, for that reason,
Right.
that was a character trying to maintain farmland and open space too, was so.
And I'm not even sure that that's appropriate. I mean, there are so many places that have, you know, 15, 20 acres of land where there could be houses in the back that no one would ever even see. So, and I don't know if I don't think it would ever happen, but I'm just saying that these are the kind of things. And Northampton's doing a lot of that. I'm not saying that we have to follow their example, but there's a lot of infill happening in Northampton. There's pushback on that too.
Yeah, those are crazy frontage.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And the example that this gentleman gave in his email was like, let's say you have a piece of land where you could put 200 frontage houses that are upper middle class houses, because at this rate you're building them and they're probably at least $500,000 on an acre and a half each. But then if you could change the frontage and then you could allow like 3 or 4 houses on that same amount of land, then those houses could actually be more like middle class actually now.
Right. Well, and we certainly have a problem with younger families being able to come to town. They can't get in because the houses just aren't available.
Yeah, it's something and I'm sure it's, again, like, I'm only bringing this up because it's something I'm sure that'll be a conversation with the comprehensive plan too. Like, you know, we want to keep families coming to our school systems and stuff too. And like,
That's a
how do
real
you
issue
do
right
that?
now,
That's
yeah.
a real issue. And so these are just things that I'm looking back and seeing the things that were recommended and what we did or didn't do as a planning board in that time that maybe like we should have or like could have adopted some more of those things. I think the open space development bylaw that we've put into place and I want to redo is kind of trying to tackle that. It's allowing for less frontage, but you have to preserve half of the land that you're developing on. So it's
Right,
allowing for,
what we talked about last week.
yeah. So there's like creative ways to both like allow for the landowners to be able to develop if they want to develop, but then also and get the same, you know, amount, you know, or close to the same amount that they would get for developing, but then also be able to preserve half the land, which actually is a benefit. Kestrel Land Trust, and I'm trying to think about it increases property values and stuff to be like to have open space near your.
Yeah, well, it is a solution to that balancing act.
Right. So that's just, I just wanted to put it out there because it was interesting. Someone reaching out asking like about the 200 feet of frontage, and arguably you could. I was looking at our zoning map. I would say probably most of the houses in town do not have 200 feet of frontage. So when we say preserving the character of Hatfield, like
Living the
what does
character
that
of what we
mean?
wanted in the 90s.
Right, the 90s McMansions that we wanted, I'm sure. Right. So there's just some things to think about as we go forward, and with the comprehensive plan committee, I'll make sure that we like have updates and stuff, and I'm sure there'll be some meetings and topics that, you know, y'all might want to listen in on or contribute to or be a part of those like land use and economic development conversations. So with that, that is just all I wanted to share about that, and that it's a 2-year process. So and then we can start talking about what to do for next steps out of whatever comes from that. So I'm excited that it's getting off the ground. So that's exciting. Anything else related to that? Otherwise, we can move on. All right. I know we talked about this last time. Just the budget is due next week. I'm almost done with just copying and pasting what we did the last year, as we discussed, and also just noting on here that we're working on getting a position up for the part-time planner. I know Marlene's been really busy with this comprehensive plan committee, for example, and other things that it is not really risen to the top of her agenda, but I'm hoping that it is a part of her agenda before we have to ask for this money again from the finance committee. So, and I see value too as we go forward in any sort of comprehensive plan process to have this planner like on board and along the ride of this process, I think would be helpful to get them oriented for Hatfield if they're not from Hatfield. Any comments on that? Otherwise, we can move on to any other board discussion or updates that are not on the agenda.
I have nothing.
No updates.
All right. I guess I'll just make a note that I'm pregnant and I'm going to be having a baby at the end of March.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I am due at the end of March, so I imagine I won't be around at the April meeting, just to name it. So
We'll come have it at your house. We'll bring the camera.
it'll be a
We're
hybrid.
bringing the camera.
We'll muddle through.
There you go. So yeah, that be dealing with that.
That's great. Good for you.
Awesome.
Thanks. It's also like kind of obvious now when I stand up, so I figured I might as well say something. And all right, minutes approval.
Saw nothing extraordinary.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Yeah, I read it and I didn't see anything.
I swear, tried. I make a motion that we accept last month's meeting minutes as written.
Do I get a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. Aye. Minutes from November 10th meeting are approved. Our next meeting is January 4th, and it looks like if things go as scheduled, we will be having that public hearing about that zone change. And I think that's everything on the radar right now. And still haven't heard anything about the hotel.
They're a ways away, but yeah.
It's still moving.
Yeah, it's moving.
Okay. Cool. All right. Without that, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
A motion to adjourn.
I second that.
All right. All in favor? All right.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 6:23.